The information shared on Light Body Radio is for educational and informational purposes only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed healthcare provider, or qualified wellness practitioner with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or health goal. Dr. Lara May, her guests, and affiliates do not claim to cure, prevent, or treat any condition and are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own health decisions and that any actions you take based on the content are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in to Light Body Radio.
Welcome to Light Body Radio, where science meets soul and healing gets multidimensional. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, functional medicine pharmacist, master intuitive Reiki channel, and certified life and health coach. Here we decode root causes, transmute stuck energy, and empower your full spectrum healing journey, body, mind, and light body. This isn't just wellness, it's awakening, grounded in science, guided by spirit, and designed for your evolution. Let's rise and radiate. Welcome to the next level of you. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, and today in this Wellness Illuminated episode, we are going to start off with a little story. So imagine a woman in her mid-40s. She's always been pretty healthy, no major health concerns. She has exercised regularly for years. She's successful in her career. She eats fairly well. She takes care of everyone around her. But then something starts to change. She walks into a room and forgets why she's there. She struggles to find words in conversations. Her workouts don't seem to be as effective anymore. The muscles she used to build very easily is starting to disappear, and her energy crashes in the afternoon. Her recovery becomes slower, her sleep becomes less restorative, and she begins to wonder, is this what getting older is all about, or is this all in my head? Or why don't I feel like myself anymore? She goes to her doctor. Her labs are pretty much within normal range, so she's told that everything's fine. Maybe that she's stressed, or again, she's told this is just part of getting older. Maybe she needs more sleep. And while all those things may be partially true, what if we're missing a much bigger piece of the puzzle? What if part of what she's experiencing isn't simply a hormone problem? What if it isn't simply an aging problem? What if it's fundamentally an energy problem? Because every symptom I just described has something important in common. They all require enormous amounts of cellular energy. Memory requires energy. Focus requires energy. Muscle maintenance requires energy. Recovery requires energy. Healing in general requires energy. And one of the most overlooked tools for supporting the body's energy system is a supplement that most people think is only for bodybuilders, creatine. So today we're going to explore why creatine may be one of the most underappreciated nutrients for healthy aging, brain health, mitochondrial function, hormonal resilience, muscle preservation, and longevity. Because this conversation isn't really about muscles in and of themselves. It's about energy, and energy is life. So let's talk about it. Let's illuminate it. What is creatine? Creatine is a naturally occurring compound synthesized from 3 amino acids: glycine, arginine, and methionine. Your body naturally produces approximately 1 to 2 grams of creatine per day. But you can also obtain creatine from foods such as red meat, bison, elk, fish, poultry. But you'll notice those were all animal products. So this is important if you're a vegan or vegetarian. So all of your exogenous creatine is coming from an animal source if you're not supplementing it. After production or consumption of these tissues, creatine is transported through the body and stored in tissues with high energy demands. So about 95% is stored in skeletal muscle, which is why for the longest time it was considered a bodybuilding supplement. But the remaining 5% is found in the brain, the heart, the nervous system, our retinas, and our reproductive tissues. So that distribution tells us something really important, that nature doesn't waste resources. So if creatine were only necessary for muscles, it wouldn't be concentrated in these other areas of the body, like the brain, the heart, the nervous system. Creatine exists wherever energy demand is highest. And that clue unlocks the entire story that we're going to talk about today. So we talked about this before, but it's worth saying again. ATP is the energy currency of life, of our biological lives. And so to understand creatine, we must understand ATP. And of course, ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. It is the body's energy currency. Every biological process requires ATP. Every heartbeat, every breath, every immune response, every hormone signal, every neurotransmitter signal, every detoxification pathway, every healing process, even thoughts require ATP. Without ATP, life stops. The challenge is that the body stores very little ATP, only enough for a few seconds of activity, which means ATP must be constantly regenerated every second, every minute, every day for your entire life. And this is where creatine enters the story. So we have a cellular backup battery. It's called the phosphocreatine system. And so inside the body, creatine combines with phosphate to form phosphocreatine. And think of phosphocreatine as an emergency energy reserve. When ATP is used, it loses a phosphate molecule and becomes ADP. Phosphocreatine rapidly donates its phosphate back to ADP, recreating ATP almost instantly. And this reaction occurs through an enzyme called creatine kinase. And the result is a rapid energy buffering system, the backup battery, the reserve fuel tank, a biological energy savings account, if you will. And so when demand suddenly spikes up, phosphocreatine helps maintain cellular function until the mitochondria can catch up. So this system is especially important in tissues that require constant energy production, like the muscles, like the heart, and especially the brain. Remember how much energy your brain requires? It's a lot for such a one organ, tiny organ in our body. So one of the reasons is that I love functional medicine and I decided to dive into the practice of functional medicine is that it encourages us to look upstream. Conventional medicine often asks, what disease does A, B, or C treat? But functional medicine asks, what system does this support, or what system is affected that is then leading to these symptoms or these manifestations that we're dealing with? Creatine supports one of the most fundamental systems in human biology, and that's energy production. When energy production declines, the consequences appear everywhere. Recovery slows, hormones become dysregulated, muscle mass decreases, cognitive function declines, inflammation rises, resilience falls, symptoms emerge. And this is why I often say that disease is frequently discussed as a biochemical problem. And that's where functional medicine comes in. That's how functional medicine looks at disease. We aren't just slapping a label on and then giving you a pill. We are looking at the biochemical problem. But before biochemistry breaks down, energetics often break down first. So the body can't heal without energy. The body cannot adapt without energy. And the body cannot thrive without energy. Creatine supports the energetic foundation of which the rest of our healing is built on. So let's talk about muscle health, because we know obviously 95% of creatine is stored in the muscles, skeletal muscles. And more now, we're starting to talk about skeletal muscle as the organ of longevity, thanks to a lot of leaders in this space. One of the people that I listen to and learn from and follow is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She's a big proponent of this concept of skeletal muscle as an organ of longevity. So let's talk about that benefit that most of us are aware of in relation to creatine muscle. So when phosphocreatine stores increase, so when you have more and more phosphocreatine, ATP regeneration improves. This allows muscles to produce more force, more power, recover faster, train harder, and adapt more effectively. And over time, we see improvements with strength, lean body mass, recovery, and performance. But from a longevity perspective, muscle is increasingly being recognized as the organ of longevity. Why? Because how much muscle mass, how healthy our skeletal muscle is, regulates our blood sugar, which also translates to insulin sensitivity, metabolism, inflammation, bone health, mobility, and ultimately our independence as we age and get older. One of the strongest predictors of healthy aging is preserving muscle mass. Loss of muscle, also known as sarcopenia, is associated with increased mortality, frailty, falls, metabolic disease, and loss of independence. I'm sure many of you out there are caretakers of aging parents, and so we see this in real life, in real time. So creatine helps protect against that decline, and that's why the earlier we consider ingesting it, the better. Yes, you can still have benefits even if you start at 70 or 80 years old, but the earlier we start, the better. Prevention is the key here. And it's not because I want all of us to look like fitness models, because that creatine in and of itself won't make you look like a fitness model, but it will help us maintain our strength longer in life. And that will enable us to enjoy our lives for decades and decades to come. So let's talk about the female body specifically here for a minute, because this is where I think the conversation becomes particularly important. Women generally have lower creatine stores than men. Women historically have been excluded from a lot of this research, not purposely, just by the nature of how the research is designed. And so women also experience dramatic hormonal transitions throughout life. This is no surprise to anyone. During perimenopause and menopause, estrogen levels begin to decline. And most people think of estrogen as a reproductive hormone, and they're not wrong, but there's a lot of other roles that it plays. Estrogen plays a critical role in mitochondrial function, in energy production, in muscle maintenance, in bone density, in brain health. And as estrogen declines, many women start to experience fatigue, brain fog, muscle loss, slower recovery, mood changes, reduced motivation, increase in insulin resistance. And we just assume that these are hormonal symptoms. But hormones influence mitochondria, and mitochondria literally influence our energy levels in real time. So part of what women are experiencing during this transition is actually an energetic decline occurring at the cellular level. And creatine provides support for the very energy systems that are struggling during this time. And that is one reason that I think creatine deserves far more attention in conversations about especially perimenopause and menopause. But if you think about this too, and I have a very special section for men today. So if you're a man, please don't change the channel yet. But I want to move on to brain health, and then we'll come back to the opposite sex and how creatine specifically influences their life, their energy, their aging. But there are a lot of parallels that you can already see just from evaluating the female perspective. But for now, I want to go into the brain health, because I think brain health may ultimately become one of the most important reasons people could possibly take creatine. The brain accounts for approximately 20% of the body's total energy consumption. again, 20% of total energy consumption, despite it only being 2% of the total body weight. So one small organ consumes 1/5 of our daily budgeted energy. So again, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Every thought requires ATP. Every memory requires ATP. Every decision requires ATP. Every emotion requires ATP. Your brain is one of the most energy demanding structures in the universe, really, because we are organic beings with organelles and organ function and organ systems. We are one of the most complex beings on the planet with all of these systems and structures. And so if you think about it, our brains are really one of the most energy demanding structures, at least on planet Earth. We don't know about the whole universe, but planet Earth for sure. And just like muscle, the brain relies on that phosphocreatine system that we talked about as the energy buffer. So creatine acts as the reserve fuel for our neurons. And when energy demand increases, phosphocreatine helps rapidly regenerate ATP and maintain cellular function. So this has really led to researchers and the research exploding lately, but investigating creatine in many more areas outside of just muscle mass, but including cognitive performance, brain fog, mental fatigue, depression, anxiety, concussion recovery, traumatic brain injury, neurodegenerative diseases, as well as healthy aging and longevity. One of the most fascinating concepts emerging from neuroscience right now is something called brain energy. And this is a simple idea. Many cognitive symptoms may not be neurotransmitter problems like we thought for so many years. They may actually be fuel problems, energy problems. The neurons are there. The wiring is there in the brain, but the cells themselves are underpowered. If there's a mitochondrial dysfunction, then they're underpowered. So when neurons lack sufficient energy, cognitive performance suffers. And this is particularly relevant for women during perimenopause, or even if you're a male going through normal aging. I'm sure you've also noticed your lack of energy, maybe your cognition declining. This is really important. If you feel like your brain doesn't work the way it used to, don't discount it. Don't just say, oh, this is a normal part of aging. It's time to take it seriously and just ask yourself, what if it's not simply a hormonal phase? What if this is ultimately an energetic foundational problem? So as mitochondrial deficiency declines, ATP production decreases. And when ATP production decreases, the brain struggles to keep up. The more we learn about the brain and the more it appears that cognition and energy are inseparable. An energized brain is often a more resilient brain, meaning it can handle more stress. And Lord knows we're living in a stressful time. And we're honestly doing it to ourselves. But even if we weren't, even if we were fantastic at managing our own stress, there's lots out there in the world to create stress for us as well. So let's move the conversation to stress, burnout, and sleep deprivation. So burnout is fundamentally an energy crisis. Chronic stress increases energetic demand while simultaneously reducing recovery. And the body begins to spend more energy than it can produce. And eventually these familiar symptoms appear. What are they? They're fatigue, brain fog, reduced resilience, poor recovery, lack of motivation. And what do most people do? They respond with caffeine. Yay, caffeine. More coffee, more stimulants, more pushing, push, 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 go, go, go. But stimulants don't create energy. They increase the demand for energy. And this is why I've seen so many people, and I've been there myself, that I have gone down the caffeine road hard and fast. And all I've really done is exhausted my adrenals faster and more efficiently. So more caffeine is not always a solution. Caffeine can be a nootropic, don't get me wrong, but there is a definite line between a healthy amount of caffeine and too much, a detrimental amount of caffeine. So again, this simply comes back to an equation of supply and demand. Creatine works differently than caffeine. Creatine helps support the systems responsible for maintaining energy availability. And interestingly enough, studies suggest creatine may be particularly helpful during periods of sleep deprivation. Think about how many people you know today that are operating on 6 hours of sleep or less. They are in a chronic state of stress and they are on nonstop stimulation from caffeine or from screens. Their brains are burning through ATP faster than they can replenish it. Creatine may help support the brain's energetic reserves during these periods and not as a replacement. Please don't misinterpret what I'm trying to say here, but as a support for the systems that are under stress. So this can definitely translate to shift workers if you're a graveyard shift worker, or if you're just perpetually sleep deprived. First of all, let's address why, but we're not going to go down that tangent today, but I'm saying for yourself to reflect, why are you perpetually sleep deprived? What do you need to change about your life to change that? But if you need that extra support, then creatine can definitely be an avenue for that support. All right. So let's talk about methylation and homocysteine. And we're going to get a little sciencey here. I know we like to be sciencey on this show anyway, but we're going to step further down into the biochem of this. So one of the most, I think, fascinating aspects of creatine involves methylation. And methylation influences a myriad of pathways in our body: detoxification, neurotransmitter production, hormone metabolism, DNA repair, cellular communication. All of that is dependent upon methylation as a process. But what many people don't realize is that creatine synthesis is one of the largest consumers of methyl groups in the body. Some suggest and some estimate up to 40% of methylation capacity can be dedicated to producing creatine alone. So to make creatine, the body uses SAMe, and it's one of our primary methyl donors. And as SAMe donates methyl groups, homocysteine is generated. And this creates a really interesting possibility. When we supplement with creatine, the body may not need to manufacture as much. So this actually may reduce methylation demand, spare some valuable methyl groups for other biological processes. So inadvertently decreasing a biological stress on the body. So who cares about this? But if you've heard of the MTHFR genetic variants, if that is perking your ears up, then you are one of the people that needs to be paying attention to this specific piece of the show today. If you have been told you have elevated homocysteine levels, and so in functional medicine, homocysteine is one of those markers that we check to measure the amount of inflammation and stress in your body. If you know you have a poor methylation capacity, if you already have neurological symptoms showing up for you, and or if you have cardiovascular risk factors present in your life or in your family history, then perk up, pay attention. This is important. Creatine may represent a very surprisingly valuable supportive strategy here for these issues, not because it fixes methylation, but because it may reduce one source of the methylation burden, which, even though it's one source, could be super powerful and impactful for your body. So, all right, we covered that. So now let's move on to mitochondria and chronic fatigue. So the energy, or the lack thereof for a lot of you. If mitochondria are the power plants of the cell, creatine is part of the energy storage and distribution network. Many chronic illnesses share a common feature, and that is impaired cellular energy production. And again, if you've listened to this show for any length of time, you're probably starting to hear some themes that constantly come up, even if we're talking about a very different thing from episode to episode. We're often talking about impaired cellular energy production. And this is really due to chronic inflammation. It sometimes can be due to mold exposure, viral illnesses, environmental toxins, nutrient deficiencies, hormonal dysfunction, chronic stress, all of the things. And patients often describe it Like, I never feel like my batteries are fully recharged. Even if I get a quote good night's sleep, I don't wake up feeling rested, or I never feel like really energized or charged up. And honestly, that might be exactly what's happening in the body. The issue is not motivation, but it's cellular energetics. Creatine doesn't replace mitochondrial function. Let's be clear about that. But it helps buffer the ATP availability when the demand exceeds production. It helps stabilize the energy economy of the cell. And this may explain why some individuals report improvements in mental clarity, cognitive stamina, exercise tolerance, recovery capacity, and physical endurance when they're taking creatine. So it's definitely not a cure for, and it's not a one size fits all, but it is something that should be considered for a myriad of aspects, I think, if we've shown nothing else today. All right. So we're finally here to our men's health section. For men, creatine offers benefits that extend far beyond that athletic performance because, again, it supports muscle preservation, it supports strength management and strength training, recovery from that strength training or any sort of exercise that you're doing, training capacity, how hard are you able to push it when you're in it, healthy aging, and metabolic health, which comes down to hormone health too. And men, you know, you guys have estrogen too, and that also falls as you age. It's not as dramatic for men as it is for women, but it is happening. As men age, loss of muscle mass contributes to declining metabolic health and increased disease risks. So protecting muscle is one of the most powerful longevity interventions that we have available to us today. And creatine really helps support that effort and that mission. All right. I want to bust through some myths real quick. So probably the number one myth is that creatine damages the kidneys. This is not true. Creatine may increase creatinine levels. And so if you've had a BMP or a CMP done as part of your annual blood work, or maybe you get it done regularly for other issues, one of the markers that we look for on there is creatinine. And that is a direct reflection of kidney health. If we see it rising, then we usually assume then your kidney health is declining. And so when you take creatine, oftentimes you will see a natural slight rise in your creatinine because creatinine is a byproduct, is a metabolic waste product of creatine. So it stands to reason, and it's normal for healthy individuals. Creatine has one of the strongest safety profiles in all of nutritional science. It has been researched since the 1800s, and it actually does not cause kidney damage. It just causes a natural rise in your creatinine levels because it's a byproduct. But in this case, it does not necessarily mean that your kidneys are damaged in any way, shape, or form. Myth number 2, creatine causes bloating. This is also not true. Creatine increases water inside the muscle cell, but this is not unhealthy water retention. This is not the same thing as bloating. This is not the same thing as retaining water. So keep that in mind too. And actually, the more hydrated your muscles are, the more effectively they can produce contraction. And again, all of those fitness benefits that we get from creatine is actually because of that bringing the water inside the cell. So the water follows the creatine monohydrate into the cell. Myth number 3, creatine is a steroid. It's not actually at all. Creatine is a naturally occurring compound found in food and produced in the body. And myth number 4, yes, is that women shouldn't take creatine. I hope we've already busted that myth today. Women are actually probably one of those best and highest beneficiaries of taking creatine. So those are some just quick myths. So dosing strategies. There's 2 approaches. There was an old school approach of loading, so taking like upwards of 20 grams, sometimes more, for 5 to 7 days to have all of your cells saturated in it. You can do that, It's actually not necessary for the long-term benefits. The only thing that's going to get you is to the saturation phase faster. But do realize that a lot of people will see GI side effects if they're doing those large loading doses. So you might have abdominal cramping or diarrhea, loose stool. So especially if you're already someone healing from a GI disorder, maybe we definitely don't do the loading phase. So there's no difference in outcomes for those that don't do the loading phase. So you can take 5 to 10 grams per day of creatine monohydrate every day, and you'll have the exact same long-term benefits. Consistency matters more than timing. And think of creatine as filling a reservoir, because it's the benefits of that accumulation in the tissues being saturated over time that's really going to lead to all these positive benefits that we've talked about today. So I want to take us back out, big picture. The more that creatine gets studied, the less that I personally think of it as a sports supplement specifically. And I think of it more as an energy supplement, again, because that's cellular energy. And more importantly, even beyond that, is it's a longevity supplement, because aging itself is largely an energy problem. It's an inflammation problem. As we age, mitochondrial function decline, brain energy declines, muscle mass declines, recovery declines, resilience declines. So creatine sits at this perfect intersection of all of these processes. It supports the muscles, it supports the brain, it supports energy production, it supports ATP, it supports the mitochondria, it supports resilience. And resilience really is what healthy aging is all about. That ability to adapt, the ability to recover, the ability to maintain function despite stress. The body cannot heal without energy, without ATP. The body cannot transform and change without energy and ATP. The body cannot express its highest potential without energy. And so creatine is not magic by any stretch of the imagination, but it does support one of the most fundamental currencies of life as human beings on this planet, which is ATP. And so when we support our energy, we support the fundamental aspect of healing and of being in homeostasis and thriving in our everyday lives. So hopefully today's episode challenged the way you think about creatine, if not changing your mind and opening your mind about it. So I would really appreciate it if you found that it challenged you or opened your mind, that you share it with someone who you think can benefit. If you're struggling with fatigue, brain fog, hormonal change, metabolic dysfunction, or simply want to optimize your health and longevity, I would love to help. You can reach out to me at drlaramay.com. But until next time, remember that energy is not just about feeling good. Energy is the foundation upon which healing occurs. So support your energy, support your healing. And thank you for joining me on Light Body Radio today. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on Light Body Radio, where functional medicine meets intuitive healing and transformation happens on every level. If this episode resonated with you, please like, share, and if you're ready to go deeper, visit drlaramay.com to book a functional medicine consultation or an intuitive healing session. Whether you need to rebalance your body, clear your energetic blocks, or reconnect with your soul's purpose, I've got you. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Lara May for daily inspiration, energy updates, and healing tools. Remember, your healing is multidimensional, and so are you. Until next time, honor your body, trust your intuition, and activate your light.